This is Mr. Eugene, and today we're having a conversation for men who have been through the fire, men who have survived divorce, who have watched the legal system strip them of assets, of time with their children, of dignity, of the life they built, men who are standing in the wreckage wondering what comes next. And here's what culture immediately tells you comes next: healing through a new relationship, finding someone better, getting back out there, proving you're still valuable by attracting another woman, maybe even, eventually, remarrying because the right woman would be different. That narrative is a trap designed to lead you directly back into the same legal and emotional destruction you just escaped. Stop looking for a rebound to heal your wounds. That is the fastest way to lose the assets you just fought to keep, and to repeat the cycle that destroyed you the first time. The legal contract of marriage failed you once. It did not fail because you chose the wrong woman, though you may have. It failed because the contract itself is structurally designed to disadvantage men, and repeating that cycle, no matter how much better the next woman seems, is a threat to your personal sovereignty that you cannot afford to take. What you need is not another relationship. What you need is a complete audit of the emotional and legal wreckage, a systematic rebuilding of yourself from the ground up, and the construction of an impenetrable fortress of self-reliance that no institution and no woman can ever dismantle again. Today we're walking through the post-divorce blueprint: how to stop the bleeding, how to audit what went wrong, how to rebuild yourself, how to protect what you build going forward, and why marriage, ever again, is off the table for any man who learns the lessons divorce is trying to teach him. This is not bitterness, this is clarity. Stay with me. The post-divorce audit, deconstructing the wreckage. The first phase of your recovery is not moving forward. It's understanding what happened. You cannot rebuild effectively until you understand clearly and honestly what destroyed the structure you built the first time. Most men skip this step. They're in pain. They want the pain to stop. The instinct is to run from the wreckage rather than examining it, to distract themselves with new women, new pursuits, anything that makes them feel better in the short term. This is a catastrophic mistake because it means they learn nothing from the experience. They carry the same vulnerabilities, the same blind spots, the same weaknesses into the next situation where those same patterns will destroy them again. You must audit the wreckage systematically. Here's how. Legal audit. Where did the contract fail you? Marriage is a legal contract, and that contract, as you just discovered, is administered by a system that is structurally biased against men. You need to understand specifically how that system failed to protect your interests so you never expose yourself to it again. Document everything that happened in your divorce. What percentage of assets did you lose? What ongoing financial obligations were you assigned? Alimony, child support? What custody arrangement resulted, and how far is that from equal? What was the cost, financial and emotional, of the legal process itself? Did the system give any weight to your contributions, your sacrifices, your needs? Or did it operate from default assumptions that you owe her regardless of circumstances? This is not about generating anger. This is about creating a clear factual record of what marriage as a legal institution actually cost you when it ended, because that cost is the price tag on ever entering that contract again. And for most men, when they see the full accounting, the answer is, the cost is too high to ever accept again. That emotional audit: what did you ignore? Now audit your own behavior and judgment. This is harder because it requires you to look honestly at your own mistakes without the defense mechanisms that usually protect your ego. Ask yourself these questions without lying to yourself. Were there warning signs you ignored? Were there red flags during dating that you minimized because you were attracted to her, because you wanted it to work, because you didn't want to start over? Most men, when they're honest, can identify multiple warning signs they saw and chose to overlook. Document those signs specifically. What were they? Why did you ignore them? What were you afraid would happen if you walked away? Did you choose her for the right reasons? Did you choose her because she demonstrated genuine character, compatibility, shared values? Or did you choose her because she was beautiful, because other men wanted her, because you felt pressure to settle down, because your biological clock was ticking? Be brutally honest. If you chose for the wrong reasons, you set yourself up for exactly what happened. Did you maintain yourself throughout the marriage? Did you let yourself go physically? Did you become passive or weak in ways that killed her attraction? Did you sacrifice your own goals and identity to serve the relationship to the point where you became a diminished version of yourself? If you contributed to the deterioration of the relationship through your own behavior, you need to identify those patterns so you don't repeat them. Did you fail to set and enforce boundaries? When she disrespected you, did you address it or tolerate it? When she crossed lines, did you enforce consequences, or did you teach her through your inaction that your boundaries were negotiable? Most men, looking back honestly, can see that they allowed patterns of disrespect to establish themselves early and then couldn't reverse them later. Were you operating from scarcity? Did you stay in the relationship longer than you should have because you were afraid you couldn't find someone else? Did you tolerate behavior you shouldn't have tolerated because you thought this was as good as it gets for you? Scarcity mindset keeps men in relationships that should have ended years earlier. The purpose of this audit is not self-flagellation. You are not trying to prove you're a failure or that the divorce was entirely your fault. You're trying to identify the specific behaviors and decisions that contributed to the outcome so you can make different choices going forward. Financial audit, what did this actually cost you? Now do a complete financial accounting of what the marriage and divorce cost you in real numbers. Calculate the total assets you lost in the divorce settlement, the present value of all future alimony, spousal support obligations, the present value of all future child support obligations, the legal fees for the divorce itself, the cost of maintaining 2 households instead of 1, the career opportunities you sacrificed during the marriage, relocating for a job, taking lower-paying work for family considerations, etc. The lost investment growth on assets that were divided rather than continuing to compound. When you see the full accounting, you will be looking at a number that is probably 6 to 7 figures for most men. That is the actual price you paid for that marriage. That number represents years, sometimes decades, of labor and sacrifice. And the question you need to ask yourself is, would you enter that contract again knowing what it will cost when it ends? Because now you know. You have the data. You can't claim ignorance anymore. For most men, when they see the full accounting, the answer is clearly no, never again. Stop the bleeding, separating your identity from the failed partnership. The second phase is stopping the ongoing damage. Because even after the divorce is legally final, many men continue to hemorrhage psychologically and emotionally in ways that prevent recovery. Your identity is not husband anymore. One of the most disorienting aspects of divorce for men who were married for significant time is the loss of identity. You were husband, you were dad in a household, you were part of a unit. Your sense of self was built substantially around those roles. And now those roles are gone or fundamentally changed. You're not a husband anymore. If you have children, you're a part-time father visiting your kids rather than living with them. The identity structure you built your life around has collapsed. This creates an identity crisis that most men handle poorly. They either cling to the old identity, trying to maintain friendship with the ex-wife, trying to preserve some version of the family unit, unable to accept that it's over, or they immediately try to reconstruct that identity through a new relationship, becoming boyfriend or husband again as quickly as possible because the lack of that role feels unbearable. Both responses are failures. What you need to do is rebuild your identity from the ground up, based on who you are as an individual man, not as someone's partner. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not someone's husband? What are my values? What are my goals? What do I want my life to look like based solely on my own preferences without needing to accommodate anyone else's? This is often the first time since early adulthood that a divorced man has had to answer these questions. Because from the moment he entered serious relationships in his 20s, his identity has been partially constructed around partnership. Now he has to discover or rediscover who he is when partnership is removed from the equation. This is not a crisis. This is an opportunity. Because the man who knows who he is, independent of any relationship, is the man who can never be destroyed by the end of a relationship. His identity doesn't collapse when a woman leaves because it was never built around her in the first place. Stop seeking validation from women. Divorce often triggers a desperate need for validation. You feel rejected, diminished, like you failed. And the instinct is to prove to yourself and the world that you're still valuable by attracting women, preferably younger, more attractive women than your ex-wife. This is ego-driven compensatory behavior, and it will lead you directly into your next disaster. Because you're not choosing women based on character or compatibility. You're choosing women who make you feel validated. And women who are skilled at making broken men feel validated are usually women who are experts at manipulating broken men. The validation you need cannot come from external sources. It has to be internally generated. You have to rebuild your sense of your own worth based on your own assessment of yourself, your character, your capabilities, your values, your growth, not based on whether women want you. When you need women to validate you, you give them enormous power over you. They can grant or withhold validation at will, which means they can control your emotional state, your behavior, your decisions. This is exactly the dynamic that got you destroyed in your marriage. Don't recreate it immediately after escaping it. Reclaim your autonomy completely. You have something now that you probably haven't had since before you were married, complete autonomy over your life. You make every decision. You control your time, your money, your space, your priorities. You answer to no one except yourself and your children, if you have them. This is one of the most valuable things divorce gives you, and most men squander it immediately by seeking another relationship that will constrain that autonomy. Protect your autonomy jealously. Structure your life exactly as you want it. Live where you want. Pursue the work you want. Spend your money how you want. Date casually if you want, but do not commit to anyone in ways that compromise your freedom. Do not move in with anyone. Do not combine finances with anyone. Do not make your life accountable to anyone's preferences but your own. Men who reclaim their autonomy after divorce and protect it consistently report that this period becomes one of the best periods of their lives. Not because they're lonely or isolated, but because they're genuinely free for the first time in decades. And that freedom, once experienced, becomes too valuable to trade for anything. The rebound trap: why your next relationship will destroy you if you're not careful. Let's talk about what happens to most divorced men in the first 2 years after divorce, the rebound relationship. The rebound follows a predictable pattern. 6 months to a year after divorce, the acute pain has diminished. You've stopped crying, you've stopped obsessing over what went wrong, you've started to feel like yourself again. And then you meet someone, she's attractive, she's interested. She's not your ex-wife, which is incredibly appealing in itself, and you start dating. In the beginning, it feels amazing. New relationship energy, physical intimacy after a long dry spell, the ego boost of being desired again, the relief of not being alone, the feeling that maybe you can have love and partnership without the toxicity you just escaped. And then the patterns start to emerge. She has some of the same red flags your ex-wife had that you ignored because you were in love. She starts making demands on your time and autonomy. She starts talking about the future, about commitment, about moving in together or even marriage. And you face a decision: do you repeat the cycle or do you have the strength to walk away even though it's painful? Most men don't have the strength. They're lonely. They're afraid of being alone long term. They've convinced themselves that this woman is different, and they commit to another relationship that will ultimately fail for the same reasons the first one did, because they didn't do the internal work required to choose differently. The hidden costs of the rebound financially: every serious relationship has financial entanglement. If you move in together, there are shared expenses. If you support her in any way, there are dependencies created. If you have a child together, which happens with shocking frequency in rebound relationships, you're legally and financially bound for life. You just escaped financial devastation, and you're setting yourself up for another round of it. Emotionally, rebound relationships are built on need rather than genuine compatibility. You need validation. You need to not be alone. You need to prove to yourself and others that you're still desirable. These are terrible foundations for relationships. They create dependencies that prevent you from healing fully and from becoming genuinely self-sufficient. Legally, if you get seriously involved with someone, especially if you cohabitate in certain states or if you have children together, you're creating legal exposure again. Common law marriage in some jurisdictions, paternity claims, custody battles. You're opening yourself back up to the legal system that just destroyed you. Psychologically, jumping into another relationship prevents you from doing the work of genuinely processing the divorce and rebuilding yourself. You're using the new relationship as a painkiller rather than allowing yourself to heal. And when that relationship inevitably ends because it was never built on solid foundations, you're back to square one, except now you're older, you've wasted more time, and you have even less confidence in your judgment. What you should do: instead, stay single, intentionally, deliberately. For a minimum of 2 years post-divorce, do not enter a committed relationship with anyone. Date casually if you want. Have sexual relationships if that's important to you. But do not commit. Do not move in with anyone. Do not tell anyone you love them. Do not create dependencies. Keep everything casual, honest, and boundaried. Use those 2 years to complete your psychological healing and processing of the divorce, rebuild your financial position, reestablish your identity as an individual, develop genuine self-sufficiency emotionally, learn to be comfortable alone, reconnect with male friendships and community, pursue goals and interests you sacrificed during marriage, become the best version of yourself physically, professionally, personally. At the end of 2 years, you'll be in a completely different position than you were immediately after divorce. You'll be healed, you'll be stable, you'll be self-sufficient, you'll have clarity about what you want and what you're willing to accept. And from that position of strength, you can decide whether you even want a relationship, not from need, not from loneliness, not from desperation, but from a genuine assessment of whether adding a woman to your life would enhance it or complicate it. Most men who do this work discover that they don't want what they thought they wanted. They discover that the single life, properly constructed, is better than the partnered life they had. And they choose accordingly. The fortress of self-reliance. What you build that can never be taken, the final phase, is construction. You've audited the wreckage. You've stopped the bleeding. You've avoided the rebound trap. Now you build something that cannot be dismantled by any external force, including any woman, any legal system, any relationship failure. You build a fortress of self-reliance. Financial fortress asset protection. Everything you accumulate post-divorce needs to be structured to protect it from future legal claims. This means never commingling finances with any partner, maintaining completely separate accounts. If you own property, owning it solely in your name, structuring business interests in ways that protect them from personal, legal exposure. Consulting with asset protection attorneys about trusts, LLCs, and other vehicles that shield wealth from divorce claims. Financial independence. Build your income and assets to the point where you need nothing from anyone. No woman brings financial value that you require. You can support yourself completely, indefinitely, at the lifestyle you prefer. This removes financial incentive from your relationship decisions entirely. Fuck you money. This is the specific amount of money that gives you the freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you without financial consequences, limiting that choice. For some men, this is $500,000 in liquid assets. For others, it's $2 million. Calculate what that number is for you and work systematically to achieve it. Psychological fortress emotional self-sufficiency. You do not need a woman for emotional validation, for companionship, for happiness. You are genuinely comfortable alone. You have friendships, community, purpose that fulfill you completely independent of romantic relationship. A woman becomes optional rather than necessary. Identity independence. Your sense of self is built on your values, your character, your capabilities, your pursuits, none of which depend on relationship status. Whether you're in a relationship or not, you know exactly who you are and your identity remains stable. Outcome independence. You are genuinely okay with walking away from any relationship, any situation, any commitment that doesn't serve you. You don't stay in situations hoping they'll improve. You assess clearly whether something is working and you exit cleanly when it's not. This requires being at peace with being alone, which is why the psychological work is so critical. Social fortress male friendships and community. You have strong relationships with other men. You're not isolated. You're not depending on a romantic partner to be your only source of connection. You have community independent of any woman, which means when relationships end, you're not socially destroyed. Purpose and mission. You have something you're building that is bigger than any relationship. Work that matters, goals you're pursuing, a mission that organizes your life. This means your identity and your direction come from within rather than from external validation or from partnership. Physical health and capability. You maintain yourself. You're fit, you're strong, you're capable. You present yourself well, not to attract women, though that's a side effect, but because you value yourself enough to maintain the vessel you live in. This creates confidence that is internally generated rather than externally validated. Why marriage is off the table forever. Now let me be direct about something that many of you are probably still holding on to, the idea that you might marry again someday if you find the right woman. Let me destroy that fantasy with clear facts. The legal contract hasn't changed. The same system that destroyed you in your first divorce is the system you'd be entering in a second marriage. The same structural disadvantages, the same bias, the same exposure. Thinking the outcome would be different because you chose a different woman is ignoring that the problem isn't just the woman, it's the contract itself and the system that enforces it. Second marriages fail at even higher rates. Approximately 60% of second marriages end in divorce, higher than the already catastrophic 50% rate for first marriages. You'd be entering a contract with worse odds than the one that already destroyed you. You have nothing to gain and everything to lose. What does marriage give you that committed partnership without marriage doesn't provide? Legal recognition? You don't need that. Tax benefits? Minimal compared to the risk. Social validation? If you need marriage for social validation, you haven't done the psychological work. There is no rational reason for a divorced man to ever marry again. Every reason is emotional, ego-driven, or based on external pressure, none of which justify the legal and financial exposure. Cohabitation creates similar risks. In many jurisdictions, cohabitating for long enough creates legal obligations similar to marriage. Common law marriage, palimony claims. If you're going to have a long-term partner, maintain separate residences. Maintain separate finances. Keep the relationship voluntary rather than legally binding. What long-term partnership looks like without marriage, this doesn't mean you're sentenced to eternal singleness or to only casual relationships. It means that whatever relationships you have going forward are structured to protect your autonomy and your assets. Long-term partnership without legal entanglement looks like separate residences, separate finances, no joint accounts, no joint property, clear boundaries around time and autonomy, voluntary commitment that can be ended by either party without legal or financial consequences, honest conversation upfront about your position on marriage and legal commitment. A woman cannot accept these terms. She's not the right woman for you, because what she's telling you is that she needs legal control over your assets and legal consequences for ending the relationship to feel secure. That's exactly the dynamic that destroyed you the first time. Don't recreate it. The woman who loves you for you doesn't need marriage. She chooses to be with you because she wants to be with you. She doesn't need a legal contract to compel your commitment because your voluntary commitment is sufficient. If that woman doesn't exist or you never find her, you are still better off single than repeating the mistake that cost you everything the first time. Final thoughts. Divorce is one of the most devastating experiences a man can go through. It destroys you financially. It separates you from your children. It undermines your sense of self. It breaks something that takes years to rebuild, but it also teaches you something invaluable. If you're willing to learn it, you don't need what you thought you needed. The marriage that you believed was essential to a good life was actually constraining a better life that you can build now. The post-divorce blueprint is not about finding your next wife. It's about building a version of yourself and a version of your life that is so complete, so self-sufficient, so resilient that no external force can ever destroy it again. Audit the wreckage honestly. Understand what went wrong so you don't repeat it. Stop the bleeding. Separate your identity from the failed partnership and reclaim your autonomy. Avoid the rebound trap. Stay single long enough to heal completely and rebuild properly. Build your fortress. Financial, psychological, social. Build a life that is genuinely self-sufficient and that you're proud of. Never remarry. The contract failed you once. Don't give it another chance to destroy you. The men who follow this blueprint don't just survive divorce. They use it as the catalyst for building the best version of their lives. Lives that are freer, more purposeful, more genuinely satisfying than anything they had before. You have been given an opportunity, a painful, expensive, devastating opportunity, but an opportunity nonetheless. Don't waste it by rushing back into the same mistake. Build something better. Drop a comment if you've been through this. What did divorce teach you? What are you building now? Subscribe, because this channel will continue providing the blueprint for men to build lives that serve them rather than systems that destroy them. Stay strong, stay free, and never give anyone the